works as a marriage family counselor in Indianapolis, Indiana, and is the author of Single Truth, You Are More Than Your Relationship Status. She's also a blogger and she dabbles in photography. Today, I'd like to introduce you to the wonderful Annie Harton. Annie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Wow, awesome.
It's Friday.
It is Friday. First, well, right now it's Friday.
Yeah.
Whoever's listening to this, it might be your Monday, so hopefully it makes it better.
Caught myself.
Huh? That's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
It's cool. This is podcasting. It's not supposed to be perfect.
So I hope whatever day you're having a Friday-like day.
A Friday-like day. Awesome. That's a great sentiment. So you're the author of Single Truth. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, I wrote it after a devastating breakup with my first love, who I was expecting to get married to. And I wanted to process the kind of the worth and identity I put into that relationship and express the importance of not doing that. For a healthy relationship to happen, we need to be able to lean on God. We need to know who we are rather than leaning on someone else to validate our worth. So that's what the book is about, that you are more than your relationship status.
And that's true whether you're single or married or in a long time relationship. That self-worth, that value that you place upon yourself is so important, not only for your mental health, but also just for your own self-concept.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. If you don't think you're worth any more than your partner, or you need that constant validation from them, it becomes almost a life of slavery, and you really can't go out and explore and find yourself.
Yes, for sure. And I have gotten really great feedback from people in all stages of life. So even though the book is titled Single Truth, I think we can all gain some truth from singleness. We've all been single at some point. And I think we forget about our single days when we get married, or when we encounter other times in our life where we forget how we had that time of growing up and learning about ourselves and growing independently. And so when we get married, we start to identify ourselves solely in that relationship. And that's when distress starts to happen, resentment starts to happen. And if something happens with our partner, we don't know who we are anymore. So you never know. With our mortality, we never know what's going to happen in the future. So put our whole worth and our whole self into another mortal human being, then we don't have really the strong foundation that we need to be resilient and to persevere no matter what.
So part of writing this book, you said that it really started with a personal story of your first love. Can you go into that a little bit? I mean, we talked about that before the podcast, and it's a great story. If you wouldn't mind just retelling that.
Yeah. So I have dreamed of being a marriage counselor my whole life, and I was really inspired by my parents' marriage. They're still married today. And I really wanted a boyfriend. But all through high school, all through college, my friends all dated, but no one asked me out. And so I was just really curious why I had such a passion for love and for marriage, but that I was kind of the forever single, kind of the 27 dresses kind of girl that I was like, is it ever going to be my turn? And I ended up praying a 30-day prayer to St. Joseph for a date to a wedding. I had my first ever +1 invitation to a wedding, and I was 25 and I was ready to not just have a date, but to have a date that would last. I wanted to meet a special guy. And on the 30th day of that prayer, I met someone, and we headed off right away. We saw each other for a whole month. So every day of the first month that we were together. But he waited until this wedding. So he was going to be my wedding date for this out of town wedding. So I kind of had an idea that that's when the first kiss would be. And it did happen that day. So my first kiss was when I was 25. And it's a story I will always remember, and something that seemed to solidify my dream, to know that, okay, I was finally going to get married. I was going to finally, have this whole picture together. And so looking back on that now, I think I'm really astonished, I guess I would say, that I have found my mission in helping people that feel discouraged and kind of helpless with being single, instead of thinking that my mission was being in that relationship. So now that that relationship is over, I have found myself more than ever, I think, since kind of emerging from that kind of expectation of how I would feel my life would go.
So you're single, not currently in a relationship, and this is not a dating site, so no one tried to contact her.
Hey, boys.
Hey, how you doing, huh? I'm single and available, and here I am on Zoom. Anyway, but you're also a marriage counselor, so how does that work?
Yes. Part of the reason I wrote the book was to help answer the question I get often from people that say, what do you know about marriage? Why would we come to a single marriage counselor? What do you have to teach us? Kind of that type of language, which comes in different fields as well. I think people bring that up when they are unsure of how to really lean on their own answer. So if people say, oh, you're not a parent, what do you know? You're not a counselor, you haven't had cancer, so what do you know? What you haven't had this disease, what do you know? Like I think we push away people thinking that they don't understand us, or they can't give us an answer, instead of leaning into ourselves for the answer. So as a counselor, even though in the first session, people come and ask me for answers, and they're like, what do we do? How do we fix it? Tell us all the things. I turn it back around on them, saying, what do you need? What do you want? Like, what do you think you should do? Kind of walking them through by asking good questions to help them find the solution. So actually, I feel like I'm more objective as a single marriage counselor, because I am not coming from my own marital argument. I'm not coming from kind of my own perspective. Like that morning, if I was having a fight with my husband, I would kind of lean on maybe the side of kind of that same argument. If I'm walking in the office and the couple's having the same exact argument that we were just having this morning, there would be some transference there, I think, from the emotional side of things. While as a single, I don't have that sort of, oh, in my marriage, I do this and this. Well, every marriage is different. Every relationship is different. So it's not for me to tell you what to do. I only see you an hour a week. So, you know what you're going to do. You're not going to do what I tell you anyway. So I'm just the professional interviewer that asks you the questions and can share research and can share stats and can share skills. So that's my job as a counselor, not to tell you the answers, because I'm not God. I don't know the answers.
Well, I think that a lot of people, especially my age or older, I'm a little older than you, like by a year or so. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, one thing I've heard in my professional life, and also, just in different conversations, is, oh, these millennials, they don't know anything. They haven't had the life experience we've had or whatever. And so you're coming into this as you're coming into this single, and you're also a millennial. And I think a lot of people don't understand the amount of intelligence that comes out of that particular generation. Just the way that you guys look at things versus the way that us old fogies look at it, is there's a different viewpoint. I think you guys are a lot smarter than we were at in your 30s, realistically. And I think there's a lot of I'm lost for the word, knowledge, boy, that's embarrassing, especially on a podcast. Can you believe that? My God, I'm on a loss for words. Stop laughing at me. I'm so embarrassed. Anyway, I just, there's a lot of intelligence in what you're saying, especially when we start talking about how people can lose themselves in their relationships and lose their identities and self-confidence because they rely so much on their partner for that daily dose of acknowledgement. And I think that's especially when people get to be a little bit older and they go through that midlife crisis where it's like, what have I done with my life? I've been working at XYZ company for so many years, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in a band, damn it, and whatever. And that puts extra stress on the marriage.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some attention on who you are apart from the relationship as well. That we all came into this world with dreams and gifts and talents, and so often we kind of try to appease our partner, or we say, oh, they want me to do this and that, but it doesn't give me any energy. They want me to do this, or they don't want me to do that, or, oh, I'm going to love all their top five things, but I have to throw mine away. Like there's a place for sacrifice, but there's also a need for kind of discerning what makes sense in order to work together for the good of the relationship. Like maybe there's a move that you're doing. So there may be a job opportunity and one of you kind of has to give up something for a little while, but then years later, you can kind of come back around or honor that in a different way. So that's a different kind of sacrifice than, oh, I'm not going to be my true self because I need to do whatever my partner wants me to do. We kind of lose that. And I think there were parts in the relationship where friends and family were just challenging me a little bit to say, do you really love that? Like, do you really want that? Like, I haven't heard you talk like that before, or I haven't heard that,
Right.
Like how preferences start changing. Like, when you start to change your whole story or change your dreams based on just someone else driving the car, instead of you saying, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. Like, why am I going in this far direction without me even being awake and alert, realizing that that's where I'm going?
Well, I also think there's a misconception within marriage, and I've been married for a long time, but the misconception that just going along with things makes everybody happy, because one partner would really like to know what your opinion is on something, and all of a sudden when you start having opinions that are different than what you've had in the last 10 years or whatever, your partner goes, what? We've always done this. You don't like this? No, I hate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely hate it. Oh, really? And then that builds a little bit of a stress ball in a relationship. You're much healthier starting off as who you are, having opinions, and being able to voice those honestly.
Yes, there's a book that I share often with clients called The Best Yes by Lisa TerKeurst, one of my all-time favorite authors. I quote her in the book as well. But there is an importance in um, knowing how free you are in giving your yes, or are you just saying sure? So
Mm-hmm.
so there's something that we say yes to so many things in our lives, but it's important to know, am I saying yes to this because I want this, or am I just saying sure, that's fine, whatever, I'll go along with you. Like there's so much more meaning when you have the freedom to actually say yes, to opportunities, to each other, and also to remind each other that you want to give that freedom, instead of just assuming, oh, my partner will say no to this. If I bring this up to my husband, he'll say no. If I bring this up to my wife, then she'll shut me down. And so I'll just go do it anyways and tell her, not tell him because he'll say no, but you never give them the freedom to say yes. You never give them the freedom to have that dialogue with you. And so I think to let our yes and our no mean no is so essential, and to be okay with that honesty.
But saying no is so hard.
It is, but it's only a two letter sentence.
It,
Two-letter word.
It's two letters, but it's so hard to say.
It is. But I tell people, especially in conflict. So if people are arguing in conflict and one of you is distracted, overwhelmed, not really present for the conversation, maybe you were stopped in the doorway, or you're finishing up a project, or you're just not presently there, it is a
Mm-hmm.
very healthy thing to say, I can't be the partner you want right now. Can we talk after dinner? Or can we be present now? That of a no being a very great thing to say, I know you're going to be frustrated that you can't do it, that we can't talk when you want to talk, but I will be such a better listener if we wait a few hours, or if we like, that's another powerful no is, I honor, respect my ex so much in loving me enough to break up with me,
Mm-hmm.
and loving me enough to say, no, this isn't working, instead of just saying, oh yeah, let's get engaged anyways and let's go on with it. And knowing that that's not where his heart was. Like, so no is a very powerful thing. And I wrote that there's a letter to him at the beginning to just say, like, thank you. Like, basically, this much I've grown. I would not have gotten to the point I am today if we just kind of sure, kind of like went along the road.
Well, and that kind of brings up something in my mind about, whether you're single or married or whatever, I think it probably applies more to single people, but even in friendships and stuff like that, ghosting is a common way of people to be a coward and just kind of back off from a relationship and never talk to you again.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, there's one person on one side going, I wonder what I did. And the other person's like, oh my God, I never want to talk to him again.
Mm.
And that's not really healthy for anybody, realistically.
No.
I mean, it creates an anxiety for the one person who is actually doing the ghosting. Like, I never want to see him. So if they happen to see you in a store or something like that, they go the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of it, the other one's going, what did I do? And there is no opportunity for growth there. It's just, it's just a clear cut goodbye.
Yeah, I think we fear rejection and we avoid rejection. But rejection is actually God's protection in a lot of ways. So if we miss out on an opportunity, that means we have another opportunity that will be better. Like if someone says no to us, there's a yes down the road. And we are so grateful that we didn't settle for just what we thought we wanted, instead of running into something better and more fulfilling for us later. So I think it's so important, especially, and I really call men to this too right now. So I want to take the opportunity to really like charge men with this responsibility.
Men are
because
the worst.
no, but I think we need men both to have more courage in asking people out and also more courage in telling us what you really think, and I think the more honest we can be in interacting with people, the less we will get stuck in confusing situations. Like, I don't even know if we're dating. I don't even know if we're just hanging out. I don't know what the intentions are. Whenever you start ghosting or being really fuzzy on intentions, something could also be being aware of your capacity. So I think sometimes we can be open and having a lot of obligations, a lot on our plates. And so we ghost because we don't know if it's a no forever. We don't know if it's a no for now. We're just like, well, we just won't respond. And then we don't have to really deal with it. And I've been trying to challenge myself with this more, is saying, I don't have the capacity for this right now. I'm sorry, I may get back to you at some point, but right now I don't have the space to participate in whatever you're inviting me to participate, or I'm not interested, or something. Like, it's okay to be honest, even though if it's uncomfortable at first, it will be so much more fruitful for both parties involved if you're able to be honest and say, I'm just not attracted to you, or I'm busy, or I'm about to ask this other person out. Like, whatever it is, it's a lot more helpful to know instead of just disappearing, because that can haunt someone forever.
From the guy's perspective, I have two comments on that. Number one, in the background, we're all, I shouldn't say we all, but there's a lot of men that are kind of gutless when it comes to women. I don't know how many, especially coaching or, being around, teenagers and young adults where, they're all, confident and tough and everything else. And then they're sitting on the bleacher or in the locker room going, oh my God, should I ask her out? What should I do? Oh, gee. And it's just like, seriously, go ask her, go talk to her. Maybe try having a conversation. Well, I think maybe I'll slip her a note. No, just go talk to her, joke around with her, have a damn conversation, and then I see that with some of my older friends too, that are either recently single or have, been single for a while. They get so nervous. And so, oh my God, what should I do? And then, in a meeting in a business, they're like, Mr. Go Get It, so there's this double-sided personality that they tend to have.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when a guy feels stuck, and they're just kind of going along, guys do a rotten job of it. They really do. It's the sures, it's the fines, it's whatever. Okay, fine, we'll just do it. And they go through it haphazardly. They go through it without any soul. And that doesn't do
or
anybody.
It's the text. It's the text that says, hey, or
hey,
and it's like,
hey, how are you?
What's this? I do
I'm
have a fun
interested in
tip. I have a fun tip for guys, though, in the sense that if you are clear about going on a date, even if the girl does not think she likes you, she will most likely say yes to that one date because she's so impressed with the fact that you are so intentional. Because that is how few dates girls are actually asked out on, because guys do not say, hey, I would love to take you out on a date. Would you like to go to dinner? Would you like to? And been like, what? Like, yeah, like what, so, and I'm not promising that, so don't come back to do that. But I've found myself being so surprised when someone is so good at the pursuit. girls want to be pursued, and so guys are like, hey, I do you want to hang out, like something. You're like, I don't know what this means. I don't know.
And I love to study society, and I think Facebook is a certain depiction of society, but I love these ads and stuff like that for some of these dating places that they talk about, whether you're on whatever the dating apps are. And there's this one English chick that has an ad that she's reading through her messages and like, hey, or I think I love you. And she goes, I think I love you too. It's just all these weird things that men will text on these dating sites that have nothing to do with, I'm really interested in you. And I think that, you have whatever the opening line is. I'm no good at those either, but I just think it's funny, or walking up to, I've been in bars with groups of guys and they'll look over and they're kind of checking out a chick and they're like, what should I do? It's like, go over and talk to her. That might work, and they walk up and they're all kind of swagging along and they come up and go, hey, how are you? Okay, fine. Nothing funny, nothing, nothing, just like, hey, like, they're supposed to automatically just turn and go, let's go out. No, they won't do that.
No, but just ask us about our, like, I think I was going to mention this too about love maps. So I do a lot of Gottman therapy, which Dr. Gottman was one of the top. Well, he's still, I'm talking about him like he's dead.
Did you say
Dr.
love
Gottman
maps?
is still living. Yeah.
A love map. Okay.
Yeah. So that in order to build a strong relationship house, you need to start from the beginning. So a lot of times when you want to kind of enter into this dream relationship, you want to dream together and you want to build this shared meaning. But you can't get there until you reach the points of the pyramid. So the shared meaning is at the top of the pyramid. But before you get to the top, no, it's Dr. Gottman.
Dr. Gottman's pyramid?
It's the strong relationship house is what he calls it.
Okay.
And the foundation is love maps. So on first dates, you ask each other questions about yourself. But after that kind of honeymoon stage, you forget to ask each other about yourself. And it happens also about us as individuals is that we forget to continue to grow, continue to learn. And so we assume that we know everything about the person, even though, especially when you marry somebody, you're going to be with them for generations. Like you're going to be with them for decades. Like,
well, this is the United States. That might happen.
Yeah. But to say that you as a 20-year-old are going to be very different as a 50-year-old and as a 70-year-old, like your favorite color may change, or your job may change, your favorite place to eat may change, like it doesn't have to be super deep questions, but if you stop asking them and stop really going into basics, you're going to feel unknown. You're going to feel unloved. And I think when you're single is the time to figure out your answers to those questions. So the more that you have to bring to the relationship, say, hey, I love the blog. I love to write. I'm a counselor. I'm doing these projects. I'm in this ministry. I'm in this and that. That makes it so much more interesting to bring into a conversation instead of, oh, I'll do whatever you do, like, oh, I'm just going to sit here. All we do is sit here, together. And there's nothing to like keep each other updated about or to share yourself. So in my book, I say that we need to give ourselves instead of lose ourselves. But in order to give ourselves, be able to know what we are giving, who we are giving to our partner.
I can tell you from personal experience that when I was 20, I was an idiot. I was an absolute moron. I had no idea what I wanted out of life. And I just, I was just kind of going through the paces in college and just, I actually wanted to be a psychiatrist when I first started out. And then after the first semester, guess what? I didn't want to be a psychiatrist anymore. Once I found out what they really did. And so then I ended up going into accounting for some reason, and then got into computers, and it just kind of naturally progressed into a technology field. And then somehow, when in the middle of the night when the demons came out, I decided to write fiction. But that's a whole different story. But I mean, things change, people change. And some of it has been some of the changes I've gone through has been very hard for my wife to accept. She's like, I never knew you wanted to do that, or I know you talked about it, but I didn't think you'd actually do it. And 7-8 years down the road, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you did that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's okay to change. I think when we are flexible, I think I just heard someone say, think like a tree, almost like in a storm. So that trees kind of bend, they're still rooted, but they bend and they sway and they're moving. Like we can't be rigid in our lives. We can't say like, okay, we're going to change. 30, I want things the way they are right now. I don't want anybody to change. I don't want situations to change. And here, especially in 2020, where there's nothing, nobody can predict anything. I mean,
no,
everything is unpredictable, but it's also reminding us of how much we don't know. It's reminding us so much of our mortality and our need for others, our need for security. And I think that's important to not be so stuck in our own expectations and our ways, but to be flexible with what we may be called to do and who we're called to serve.
I agree with you on most of that. The being flexible part, I think, is very hard, especially for somebody that's kind of ingrained in their ways. So when you are when you're counseling somebody who's been married for 20 years and you start talking about, be flexible, and they've never been that way, how do you use narrative therapy, or how do you address that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really try to look at the reasons behind what they're doing or what they are expecting, because I think there are things on the surface that we think explain what we do and why we do it, but it really points to something deeper, and it really points to something else, maybe in our childhood or something else in our story of why we are so regimented, why we are so like, this is the way it is, and don't invite me to change because the last time I changed, this happened, or the last time this happened, my world fell apart, or this happened, so that there's always some kind of level of fear, discomfort, that comes from an invitation to change, because we get comfortable and we get static, instead of feeling like we're open to learning a new perspective and to listen. And part of my therapy is to help people listen and really share what their primary emotions are, what their secondary emotions are, what's really deep in the heart that may be hard to really get across because there's a lot of stress or anger involved with not feeling understood. So to really slow down and really say, now why is changing so hard for you? Why are you scared? And I think those conversations are very fruitful because there's usually some sort of fear involved.
So just kind of a follow-up question to that. Conversely, how do you do that when you're single? I mean, because those are very good things when you're married, but when you're single, you have the same kind of issues. I mean, it's more external. Developing that self-worth and understanding that,
Oh,
you may be in a relationship, you may not be in a relationship, but it doesn't, it in no way, shape, or form really is a judgment on you.
yes, yes. Totally. It is so important to know that being single is not a punishment. Being single is not a kind of a qualifier or disqualifier for, a next stage in life. I think it's just a time to explore, dive deeper into yourself, to enjoy freedom in a new way. I'm trying to really see what can I do that my married friends can't do right now. How can I savor these opportunities, this freedom to travel, and this freedom to serve and write and have a quiet time and have naps and all of the things that I know I will miss going forward. And I think something about communication is essential, that we have needs just like everyone else, and we need that physical touch. We need that social interaction. So the pandemic especially was difficult because a lot of families who have been stuck together, they all can have physical touch because quarantined together. But living alone during a pandemic, I had to really communicate with people that said, like, I need a hug, like I need to talk to someone. I almost moved in with my sister and her brother-in-law when the lockdown started here in Indiana, because I was like, is it going to be worse being, or would it be better to be out of my house but with other people? And my friends encouraged me to stay home alone because God to teach me about solitude, not being lonely, but to really dig deeper into myself. And I think during quarantine, people have not had the place to escape from their discomfort. So I think people really knew their relationship status during a time where you're stuck in your house. If you're single, you really know you're single because there's nowhere to go. There's no social interaction. Like, you are single and it's you, me, myself, and I. Or if you're married, you're married. And some marriages didn't make it and some marriages thrived. It was kind of a make or break thing because you had nowhere to escape to. You had to face each other in that trial.
And I tell you what, facing your spouse during quarantine and all of a sudden you have to talk to them, that's tough.
I know.
That's tough.
I know.
I mean, you haven't talked to them in 10 years and all of a sudden, hi, how are you? What do you like to watch nowadays? I mean, life gets so busy, and, whether you're single or in dating or married, that one-on-one time becomes a little tough. Now we talked about the judgment of single people and how, the expectation is, you get married here, you have kids here, you do this here. Now you have your, your career, and you do this and you do that, and you work until, you're almost dead, then retire, and then hope to God you have health to be able to do what you've always dreamed about, and it becomes this long timeline of wishes and hopes that never come true.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you laughing about?
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about the question in that.
There was no real question. Let me rephrase that. So there is a question. So how do you deal with the judgment that you feel from being single? I mean, you come from a Catholic background, so of course that's very family orientated, where you should be married and have 14 kids. How do you bust out of that being single and 30?
It's tough. I mentioned earlier about success and how the world kind of views success and how social media views it, because you scroll through feeds and people are getting engaged and married and having kids, and everyone's like, woo, everything's great, and then you're like, hey, I got on a podcast today. Like, and people are like, oh, okay, cool. I had another baby, So I think to know how to speak up for your success and to advocate for yourself, because maybe at family gatherings or with friends, you you have to know how to share your wins, how to share your needs, how to communicate. I know with my girlfriends, we hang out a lot with their husbands, who I love dearly as well, but I remind them how important it is to have girl time as well, and to not always feel like the odd one out, because all through our lives, I've always been the fifth wheel, the eighth wheel, whatever, or the seventh, whatever it is. And at family gatherings, it's like, oh, are you online? Are you dating anybody? Are you this? And, it gets really old after a while, because it makes it seem like I'm not doing enough. I think for single people, there's a lot of perspective of, if you just tried harder, if you just figured out your life, if you just went on this dating site, you can go shop for a guy and just, it'll be over, and that's not the way it works. But it does put a lot of pressure on us, like we're not working hard enough in order to find a husband, or we're not open enough, or we're closed-minded, or we're not this, instead of just being able to be present in the moment, to be trusting, to be faithful, to know that God always has us exactly where we're meant to be, and that he is never late. So if there was a better place in my life to be right now, I would be married. But today, that is not the best place for me, clearly, because I'm not married. So I think the number one lie, I go back to Adam and Eve a lot, that the serpent told Eve that God was not really truthful. So that he kind of hinted at Eve like he was holding out on them. Like, oh, God doesn't want you to eat from the tree because then you'll be like him, and he doesn't want you to be like him, and like this and that. And I think that's the first lie, when we start having the grasp for what we need and what we want, instead of trusting that God is a good father and he will give us only good gifts, instead of us chasing around the world. So I just heard another thing too with Adam and Eve, is that Eve was not told to go hunt for Adam, and Adam was not told to go hunt for Eve. They were given to each other. And I think there's so much in this world where we just run ragged. We're like, where's the guy? Where's my husband? Where is he? Like all of this. And it's just so stressful, because I could be doing that for 10 years, or this, and not be living my life to the full right now, and then being surprised when, hey, there he is. Like, and that's always the way it happens when I hear stories. It's like people don't search for it in the way that we feel like we need to. We need to fix it. We need to find the solution. And if Annie's sad one day because she's single, we got to go find her a guy. We got to do this. And it's like, I can still have emotions of loneliness, but also to communicate when I need to lean on God for that time, and when I can lean on friends, family, and to be supported in lots of different ways. So whatever you're feeling, your feelings are valid, and don't let anyone feel like, oh, if you only met a man, everything's going to be okay. If you only met your wife, everything's going to be fine, because that is a lie. That's a lie.
I agree with you. The one thing that I think happens, especially with social media, is that you get to see the highlights of somebody's life. You get to see the oh my gosh, I'm on this trip to Cancun. Oh my gosh, look at my happy picture, and then they portray it a certain way. But in reality, life has its ups and downs. There are the stinky parts to it too, where it just sucks. And they don't, very rarely do you see somebody, well, sometimes you do, but the horrible parts that they don't want everybody to know about, and looking at it from the outside in, it certainly can seem like, everybody else has this perfect life, and look at me. Oh, and there becomes that self-deprecation.
An important conversation that we can have with people from different stages of life is to share the good things about the other stage of life as well. So I think some people feel like it's helpful if they look miserable in marriage and say, oh, my husband's so annoying and you're so lucky. You don't have a husband, all this. Well, I'm saying they're going, I know that marriage is a blessing. Like, I know that, like, you don't have to make it look awful. Like, cause I know that marriage is pretty great too, but I think people feel like they have to make it sound like, oh, you're not missing much. Oh, it's just whatever. I'm like, that's not helpful for me. What I think would be helpful is to talk about the positives. So sometimes with my friends, I'm like, what do you miss about single life? What do you miss about marriage? What can I say? Oh, I look forward to marriage when I'll have someone to come home to, and when I'll be able to have kids, and when I'll be able to do that. And then people can look back on single life and say, oh, do you remember when you could just pick up and go wherever you wanted, where you could, not have to kind of check in with someone about every decision that you're making, or when your budget is a little different, or all of these things that are positives that you can really focus on. Oh, I need to take advantage of that while I have it. Oh, I can experience that without thinking, oh, marriage looks so awful from all their friends, and I know marriage is great. I know it has its trials too. So you're not tricking me when you're like, oh, it's so miserable. I just hate coming home to my husband every day. It's like, I know that's not true. Like, just that doesn't make me feel any better.
I kind of look at it as like my first 4 years in college. There's a lot of things that I did that there's no way I could do when I was 30 again without probably ending up in the hospital. I lived in a house at one point in time with 5 other guys, and we had a pool and we had a hot tub, and it was in the bottom of a psychology professor's basement, or in a psychology professor's basement. And man, did we have the parties. And it was, I was lucky that I worked later in the day, because there's no way I was getting up at 8 o'clock ever, during that summer. School was tough because we had to kind of rein things back in. It's like, okay, at some point in time, you need to make room for studying. Okay, when's that going to be? Right after happy hour, or whatever. Oh. But it was, I learned a lot and I experienced a lot during that time. We drove all over the place and we did all sorts of crazy things. But again, that was something that, probably formed me to somewhat who I am today. But also, I don't think I could ever go back to that. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'd survive a week of it, actually, but who knows?
Well, and you're not meant to, because first of all, your body, yourself, you're not that person anymore, right? And it's okay to grow up, and it's
kind
okay
of,
to think,
but not really.
It's okay to really see that the best is yet to come too. And I think we get so focused on, 4 years of college is the best 4 years of your life, or that first year of marriage is the best and it's all downhill from there, or all of this kind of scarcity mindset. That's another thing. So scarcity mindset keeps us from seeing the possibilities. So if all my friends are getting married, then they're taking all the good guys and then there's none left, while in an abundance mindset, it's saying that the graces keep coming, the days just get better. I know that there's plenty of room for both of us, that there's not this competition, that if someone else gets married, it's not like, dang it, there's one less guy, or like, and I think we can get stuck in that sort of mindset, thinking that one story limits another. Our stories are all different. We all arrive at different times. We all grow at different times. It doesn't mean that, since she experienced that, he experienced that, that means I can't do it. There's only one spot for each of these things. And that's not true. We can have an abundance mindset. There's room at the table. There's opportunities for us all. If it's for us, it's going to happen. If it's not for us, then that's not something God wants to give us.
That's all excellent advice. It really is. You're doing a good job.
I have some wisdom and insight.
You absolutely have some wisdom. You're dropping knowledge bombs all over the place on this little podcast of mine.
I did want to highlight something though on my book though too, is I don't think that men have a lot of these resources. So I wanted to make sure that my book was very presentable to men, and I wanted to make sure the cover kind of showed that. I wanted to make sure that it didn't seem all lovey-dovey kind of relationship, like, because I feel like girls have a lot more of the kind of communication books and the love books, identity stuff. So even though I am a girl and I have the perspective of life from a girl, I have felt very called to really speak to guys as well, and to really, like, this book is dedicated to my ex, and really kind of thought of what do men need to hear, especially when they feel like, oh, I just need a girl, or I'm not worthy of a girl, or I'm not this, or I'm not good enough for that. I think there's so much to be said about how both women and men are impacted by relationships and the lack of relationships.
So what I, my male mind automatically goes, well, okay, so you just read Playboy, right? No,
that is so unhealthy. That is extremely unhealthy.
That's not going to work. Okay, so I talked to my buds because they'll make me feel better. And some of them may not even be any better at relationships than I am or whatever, and there's all sorts of really bad advice that happens in the locker room, of course, that type of stuff. So I think younger men now are more apt to find resources versus the other generations where it was, maybe I'll talk to a couple of my buds, maybe I'll do this or whatever. I also think that relationships with women have changed, to where there's a lot more, male, female friends and in society today than maybe in the past. Type things where you can, find different resources or whatever. But I do love the fact that your book addresses both male and female. That's pretty cool. The one thing that we've talked an awful lot about what you do and your book and everything else, but Annie, we really haven't talked about you all that much. Tell me about the quadruplets.
Yes, I talk in my book about how I have struggled throughout my life with my identity as a big sister, and I'm still in therapy for that as well, because it's something that I think will impact me during my whole life. When I was 2.5 years old, my parents brought home quadruplet siblings, and since that day, I became a performer, an entertainer. It's hard to get me off the stage, like in terms of speaking, talking, because I just kept them happy. I was able to just add fun to the household and kind of keep them entertained. So growing up, a lot of my worth, a lot of my identity was in the fact that I was a big sister. I couldn't just be a sister, because if I was a non-quad, I had to be something. So I really took a lot of pride in being the big sister of quadruplets. So they're 2.5 years younger, and I love them to death, and we're all on different paths. Now we all have, I think we've gotten a lot closer as adults as we are figuring out our way, because definitely in school, they were all in the same class. So it was all like, my friends and then all their friends. So it was hard at times to feel like I always had to join them, because there were 4 of them and they all knew each other. And then if I showed up to something, I was like, hi, I'm the big sis. So there was a little division there, because I was trying to find out who I was, and I didn't want to just kind of get lost in the quads, because I wasn't one. So it was an interesting life, kind of being the odd one out, but also getting to be the role model, getting to be their big sister, getting to pray for them and guide them as much as I could. But I'm learning more now to just be a sister and to be a companion, because there are things in their life that I have not been through before. So I don't have to be the wise one. I have a sister who's married. I have another brother who was supposed to get married tomorrow, but had to delay it to April due to COVID. And they're growing and developing in their own ways, and they're all just beautiful people now. And I realize that I don't have to have the answers, that I just need to continue to ask others about themselves and to companion them on the way.
I can't imagine having quadruplets as younger siblings.
I can't imagine it any other way.
Yeah, well, So you mentioned that you sang and danced when you entered the house. You gonna sing for us?
No.
No?
When I said that, I didn't mean that I'm good at it. And I sing for myself. I dance for myself. I do want to be in a musical sometime. So, I've been talking to a friend about the possibility of that. So,
oh, really?
It'd be great to just kind of, in a local. It's been one of my pipe dreams of just to be a part of a musical production. Just not a big one, obviously, not Broadway, but a local one. If they would accept me.
Oh,
I don't know about the audition, but yeah, I just love to do dance workouts and do different. And I've loved Hamilton. I've loved musicals. It's just so fun I wish life was a musical.
Hamilton's one of those things where I don't know. I probably don't know anybody who hasn't watched it except for myself. I haven't yet.
I started in July. So it is funny because I feel late to it because it was made 6 years ago. So all these videos I'm watching on YouTube and interviews, I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing this. Oh yeah, that was 4 years ago. Oh, they're doing that. Oh, that was 5 years. I'm like, oh, okay. I have a lot to catch up on.
I always mark it down as one of those things. Okay, I need to watch this next time I sit down, and I'm horrible at that. It's the same thing with my reading list. I mean, I've got 40, 50 some books that I want to read, and I can't seem to get through them fast enough. And then of course I go out and buy more books, and
well, Hamilton though is a love letter to writers, and I was wondering why I loved it so much until I heard Lin-Manuel describe it as a love letter to writers, and now I know why my heart was so happy throughout the whole thing, and knowing about the power of story, really diving deeper into what we identify ourselves by and who is by our sides throughout life. So I loved the marriage part of it. I loved just the forgiveness part of it, the healing part. There was just so much richness to narrative. And as a narrative therapist who's a writer, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much depth to this.
So Single Truth was your first book.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of writing, do you have something else in the works, or what are you doing now? I know you blog, and I also know that you dabble in photography, which is all on your website, which is annieharton.com.
There it is.
There it is. Probably drop that about 5 more times just so everybody catches on. But
annieharton.com.
annieharton.com. Yeah, it's a great place. I love that website, annieharton.com.
It's a great website.
It is. It's a great annieharton.com is a great website. It is awesome. So what are you writing on now? What are you working on?
I'm currently doing Sunday gospel reflections on my blog for Blessed is She Indianapolis. But those are on my blog every Sunday. So that's kind of my weekly writing action now. I'm trying to think of a next book. I have kind of two things I'm kind of dabbling in. One is about playful prayer, because a lot of people don't know how to pray or expect prayer to be a serious, kind of boring activity. But Jesus was human. He could joke. He could find humor. There's a lot of creative ways that you can pray based on your personality and all of that. So I would love to talk about that. And then since watching the Chosen TV series, which I highly recommend too, it's the greatest crowdfunded TV series. And it is the first multi-season series about Christ. And since then, there have been so many stories of people across the world who have been changed in their hearts and their faith, especially through praying together online through social media during the pandemic. So someone just came to me with an idea of gathering all of the conversion stories from around the world that have happened all during the pandemic, based on the Chosen community. So
So
watch that too.
Are you gonna stick to mostly? Are you gonna stick to nonfiction, or do you have any desire to do a little fiction?
I'm definitely more of a nonfiction. I really like devotional memoirs type thing. So that's what I would describe my book as, is kind of some scripture. And I have a master's in theology and a master's in marriage and family. So I've always been into bringing life to faith and faith to life, and really finding the power of real story. And I think that's why I love Hamilton so much too, is it's like a real story of history that we can really dive into the complexities of that. The only nonfiction, or the only fiction I've been kind of thinking about is maybe reflecting on Simon's wife. So in scripture, St. Peter had a wife because Jesus healed his mother-in-law. So we know that he had a wife, but no one really talks about her. In the Chosen, they name her Eden, and they really talk about the marriage there. And I have pictures of them in my office because I love having married saints around. Mm-hmm. So I could see myself doing a little historical fiction, but I just know that would take a lot of research and wanting to make it sensible. I would want it to be kind of believable a little bit, but I don't know.
You just make it up as you go. That's what fiction is about.
I know, but if it's kind of historical fiction, I would want to make sure that it's not like totally.
No, you just make up your own history.
That's true. But I'm
build
definitely
your own
more
world, and this is the way I want it.
I used to write fiction all growing up. I wrote a book about so I wrote plays and books all growing up because I had so many people in my family to act out for me. So I wrote plays so the quads could act them out. And I wrote books, and I wrote one about the Humane Society, about these 4 pets that all met at the Humane Society, and it was all of their 4 backstories. And I sent that to the Humane Society. I mailed it off to them, and still haven't heard anything from them. But my grandma still loves it. My grandma still loves the story, and it was called Friends. So I did fiction growing up, so I could tap into that a little bit, but there's so much richness of life to share, so it's hard to switch my brain to the fiction.
Somebody probably grabbed that and said, you know what, I'm going to write something called Homeward Bound.
Oh, yeah. I take all credit for Homeward Bound.
That was really yours.
I take, yeah, but there were only 2 animals there. Right?
There's 3.
Are there 2? Yeah.
There's 2 dogs and a cat.
Okay, so they missed my 4th animal then. I had 4.
That's editors. They just trash things. They just cut things out.
That's funny. Yeah. So I take credit. Yeah. Homeward Bound. So it was all my idea.
Yep. If there's any lawyers listening, please get a hold of Annie right now, because there's some copyright infringements we need to talk about.
Nope.
Paycheck. Then all of a sudden, you win that settlement, and all of a sudden your dating life will turn into something else. Oh. Hey, lottery winner, how are you? How are you?
What you doing?
What you doing?
I know that one.
Yeah, do you?
Okay.
Oh,
got
shoot.
a Joey coming out there.
A little bit of Joey. So you're also into photography.
Hmm.
So is this just a hobby that that you're kind of getting into, or I saw some of the pictures that you have, but
Yeah.
but
I have always been a photographer in my groups of friends and family, and I've always received a lot of affirmation on my creative eye for capturing moments that people wouldn't think to document. So I'm big with documenting um, events so that you would really feel like you were there. And I had friends in college that said all their pictures from college are through my eyes. So like their Facebook are all ones that like I took through my perspective. So I don't think I would ever be like a full-on marriage or like a wedding photographer or a full-time wedding photographer, because I love to write and counsel much more. And I know that's a tricky industry to get in, but I would love to be a second shooter, which for a lot of weddings, photographers are having like kind of a backup where you're not like kind of the head photographer, but you can kind of run around and get other shots that will be added to the order when the couple receives all the pictures, because I'm definitely more of a candid shooter. So I love capturing joy in pictures or thinking of memories that somebody may not think of. So I still need probably some more supply. I just got my first camera a couple years ago. When I talked to a photographer at a wedding, I was a bridesmaid and I was like, hey, so how do I get started? And she's like, I'm selling my old camera. I was like, okay, I guess I'm starting right now. Like, but I know it's a hard industry because people have to trust you, first of all, to hire you. And so I've tried to do smaller things to start out with to build up my portfolio.
See, I'd probably be the third shooter that gets nose pickers and the photo bombs.
Yeah. And nowadays, though, too, the iPhone is so good in terms of quality. So I know that a lot of weddings, they're holding their iPhone and their camera, because sometimes the zoom doesn't capture it as much as just an iPhone.
My favorite picture is a self-proclaimed and very vocal vegan putting ham on her plate.
Oh. At a wedding? At a wedding? That's so awesome.
It is.
That's so, yeah, but
Let
I
the
just
blackmail
love
dollars just roll in.
I just love it. And I love to capture backgrounds. I love to capture, like some of my favorite shots are like capturing like a table of empty beer cans with the dance floor in the background, or like people getting up and like dancing, but then showing that they've like left something behind, or if you see a sign in the background or some sort of symbolism in the background for showing where you are in the moment. Like I think about the scenery, like what is telling the story behind you instead of just taking a picture. I think there's ways to tell the story through photography. It says 1,000 words.
Okay, now I'm just kind of curious with your photography, and I also see that you travel a lot. Have you taken a lot of pictures of, like the different places that you've lived and stuff like that?
Yeah, I have a ton of pictures of like one of my goals is to organize my iPhotos, and that's going to take a long time. So that's one of my tasks that I definitely want to do. Because I like pulling them up for certain memories or certain Instagram posts or all the things when situations come up. Like yesterday, which we're filming this now, but it was the feast of St. Teresa of Avila, and I went to Avila in Spain. So it's really cool to have experiences like that to help shine light on someone's experience. When you can actually step through the town, like St. Francis is my confirmation saint. And I went to Assisi back in 2009, and that's one of my favorite places I've ever ever been. So really to experience a place and to have an open mind about a different culture and different foods. And I love food. So I just still dream about the Italian dinners after 10 years. And Texas has amazing food and Spain has amazing food. So I love food.
So you lived in Rome for how long?
A semester.
A semester. Okay.
As a sophomore in college.
Cool. And you went to college at
St. Mary's at Notre Dame.
At Notre Dame. Okay. So how'd you end up from in Houston? Was that just
Yeah, I did a graduate program with Notre Dame called ECHO, and it's a master's in theology program that they send you somewhere in the country to work for a church. So I was sent to Houston, and I worked at St. Teresa Memorial Park, right in the heart of downtown Houston. So that was quite the experience to go to rodeo and to encounter all the fun culture down there, which I'm a big Mardi Gras girl. I love New Orleans. I love Cajun. So I went to Mardi Gras when I was down there. And then a lot of people from New Orleans moved to Houston after the hurricane.
Yep.
So there was a lot of Cajun culture all through Mardi Gras season. There were king cakes stacked to the roof of the grocery store, and just a lot of fun atmosphere down there in the heart of Texas.
The one thing about Houston is I always find it so humid.
Yes, I moved in when it was over 100 for a whole month, and we learned that it was a nice day if it was under 100.
Yeah.
And it's the most air-conditioned city, I think, in the country. So the AC is blowing from building to building, but then you have to walk from building to building. So you learn to wear a cardigan. Like I learned to wear sweaters when it was in the 90s because you walked inside and you were like freezing. So it was a very hard thing to balance the heat.
So with all your travels and everything, have you ever thought about maybe doing like a picture book with a narrative? You know, you're kind of into memoirs and stuff, but
yeah,
and especially with being in Rome and having a theology background, I would think that'd be something that you could probably put together fairly easy, or not fairly easy, but
Yeah. Well, and I put together a photo album. I walked the Camino de Santiago by myself in Spain 2 years ago, right before I wrote this book. I was transitioning from my 20s to my 30s, so I went there and walked and really reflected on everything I gained in my 20s and was welcoming my 30s. And then I started a year-long dating fast so I could write this book from my 30th birthday and then publish it on my 31st birthday. So it was kind of a year to really process where my life was going. So I did that a little bit with my Camino. So that's a great idea. And I also want to do some pilgrimages. I would love to do some retreats, especially for couples, for singles, to really help them to experience these amazing places.
So if you're going to do a couples retreat, where would you go?
Well, I have been talking to a tour guide in Rome. So Rome would be awesome to do that, to reflect on some married saints and to really be in kind of this love city. I love Rome so much. I've also been talking to a tour guide in Minnesota to go on like a hike, kind of an outdoors marriage experience. And then I can't wait to go to the Holy Land. So, but I would want to go to the Holy Land first myself before leading people there. So I'm praying that within the next year or so, I will get to go to the Holy Land as well.
Just so you know, where I'm from, the Holy Land's actually Soldier Field.
How about Yankee Stadium? I think that's really like
Excuse me? Yankee Stadium. Well, yeah, I could kind of see that as long as it's not the Colts.
I used to want to be buried in Yankee Stadium. Just funny to think about. But I still love, oh my gosh, I could talk about the Yankees all day too.
I can't. I honestly, I can't talk about them. I could talk about the Cubs, maybe the Brewers, but the Yankees, oh, they're just the evil ones.
Well, Derek Jeter was the one that inspired me to be a marriage counselor. So.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell me more.
because
How did that work?
his autobiography, The Life You Imagine, inspired me as a middle school kid to have my own dream, because when he was 8, he told his parents he was going to be shortstop for the Yankees. And I said, I want to find a dream. And I was like starting to think about it. And I said, I want to be a marriage and family counselor. And here I am. So he plays for the dream. Yeah, he plays for the Yankees. I play for God, I guess, and helping strengthen marriages and relationships.
That works.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that, throughout this interview, I've learned an awful lot. I really appreciate your insights and your knowledge. I love the premise for the single truth. I am going to pick it up and read through it. Even though I'm a married guy, I'm sure there's lots of knowledge bombs you can drop on me. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
If you're listening to the podcast, she's showing me the book on the video. You can go to YouTube and see the actual book. Or else you can also go to AnnieHarton.com and you'll see it there. It's on Amazon. Are you selling it anywhere else, or is it just basically Amazon?
I have paper copies too. So if you're local in Indy, I could give you an autographed copy. Somewhere we could meet up. And also, I want to remind you that even though the title is Single Truth, it is not just for single people. I've gotten reviews. Married men have loved it. Married women, widowed, divorced, single. I've heard people wanting to give it to middle school kids, high school kids. It's really just the reminder that wherever you are in your life, you have a love that is free, faithful, and fruitful, and that your identity is more than your relationship status, even if you're single or in a relationship.
I think especially in the time that we're living now, in the whole COVID lockdown, quarantine, maybe quarantining again, in my state, especially, I was just watching the news this morning and COVID's on the rise, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about, locking things down again at some point in time to try and get under control. It's especially important to realize, that you are an individual and you do have certain needs, especially if you're alone.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're in a marriage, that, that individuality and that self-confidence that you need to develop to be a human being is something that you need to nurture. And, the message that you're sending out with your book and also with your, the way you practice and everything else, I think is just awesome. I think you're going to help a lot of people, Annie.
Thank you for that affirmation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. We're going to go ahead and end this podcast now. This is Jeff Bacon of the DIY Writer Podcast. If you're listening on whatever medium you're listening to, please follow. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, please, for goodness sakes. Anyway, Annie, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Bye now.